Hello everybody, and welcome to the 2025 Elevator Parts Tour. I have received a lot of comments asking when the next tour is going to be. So since you guys really seem to like these videos, I think it's about time for an update here in March of 2025. Now, the first thing you might notice is it is completely different. And you can see here it actually kind of follows a similar layout to the Elevatours Elevator Museum. And that's because I'm the one who pretty much built the Elevatours Elevator Museum into the state that it's in now. And this is a really great place to test out different things before I implement it down there. So I have the exact same shelves that I use down at the museum, and of course I've kind of laid it out in a similar way. So like always, we're gonna go through all of the elevator parts, and it's actually been so long since I made the last video, I don't totally remember what I had then and what I have now because a lot of stuff has changed. I've gotten a lot of new stuff, I've gotten rid of some stuff. A lot of you guys who watch all these tours probably will instantly recognize all the changes. But anyway, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So we're actually going to begin this tour over here on the right side where I have a couple of larger items. So this very first item here is a panel I have wanted to get for a long time. This here is a newer style long elevator with the monitor square buttons, which I'm super excited to have now. So this is not wired up yet, but I do plan to build a simulator out of this at some point. And that will be the saying of this video a lot because there's a lot of things I want to build and I haven't yet. Right above it, we have a very special elevator part. This here is the call button from the old V-Stock at Chesterfield Mall. This was the button that was upstairs. So it kind of just sits up here on top of the long panel. But it's really cool to have a piece from an elevator I rode many times as a kid. And there are a few other Chesterfield Mall parts hiding around in the collection. And up here we've got a Haughton lantern that I mounted to the wall. So moving over here, we have a couple more panels. The first one is my newer Otis Series 1 panel. Now you guys might remember that I had an Otis Series 1 panel that was just missing a bunch of parts. I had it for years, and I actually kind of just acquired a new one. This came from somewhere in Roanoke, Virginia, but this thing is in way better shape than my other one, and it's complete, unlike the other one. So that's really exciting. So I got all the clicky buttons and the key switches, so I'm very excited to have that. Now over here is a very special piece to me as well, because this actually came from a parking garage in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is an old Dover Northwestern panel with this really unique armor button layout. You've got kind of these circle buttons on the side and then these indicator lamps on the right with all these little cities in it. And I actually made a video, oh nice, that broke. I actually made a video about this elevator, or at least a final ride, and then also when both cars were working. And I'm super excited to actually have managed to save this panel. Moving on over here, I do know that I've had this panel for a while, so you guys have seen this one lingering around before. This is the Surface Mount Dover with the little light, and after all these years, it still isn't wired up. Like I said, very common theme of this video. But back over here, we have this Otis Lexan COP, and I don't know if I had this in my last video or not, because I think I got this right around the time when I made that video. But this is a neat little panel. This came from somewhere in the Chicago area. A little beeper in there as well. So here we have a Haughton in and out of service panel here for the parking garage elevators at the Hilton in Indianapolis, Indiana. Up here we got a few various signs. Here's an escalator sign, an old Otis sign, and then a fire operation sign. Not sure why I just stacked those there. I probably should make those look a little bit nicer. Moving on up the wall, we have this surface mount ThyssenKrupp panel. There used to be different types of buttons in here, but I switched them out with these kind of cool Aurora buttons, more of the rare vandal resistant type. And it has the chime in there. Up here is this 6-stop Dover PI, which I just kind of mounted to the wall because it looks cool. It's really small. Up here is an Otis Series 1 lantern. And up here we have 2 Montgomery logos. So over here on the side of the shelf, we've got this old Westinghouse car being inspected sign, which is pretty neat, and a gigantic Westinghouse motor plate. Below it, we've got a long plate. Down here is a firebox. Fire key box, which I have conveniently put a bunch of different keys in. We'll be coming back to that later as we need keys for different panels. Here is a Schindler Port kiosk, and this actually came from an elevator that I rode in San Antonio. And the funniest thing about this is when I was down there, meeting the elevator technician, we went up to the I think second floor, whatever the top floor of that hotel was, and these were getting modded, and I asked him if I could have this kiosk, and he went and ripped it off the wall. And the funny thing is in my video of these elevators, my thumbnail is this exact kiosk. So out of all the kiosks I could have gotten, I got the one that was in my video, so that's pretty cool. Next to it, we've got a Schindler Myconic logo. Now these were what was on the Busch Stadium parking garage elevators before the mod, which I love that logo, that's super cool. And then here we have a long logo, and this actually came from one of the Keener parking garages. So we've got some St. Louis parking garage history on the wall here. So moving on to the first shelf on the bottom, we've got this Modernized by Montgomery plate, which looks really cool. And a Dover stop switch, that would be in the pit. This here is a 6-stop Dover COP, which we actually have one of these down in the elevator museum. And this is the car panel that lantern or that PI was from. Here's a Hunter Hayes panel. This is from somewhere in Texas. This was a piece that was in the museum, but it's kind of on loan to me from the museum because I don't have any of these square button armor, which is pretty cool. I need to wire it up still. And then over here on the right is the Otis black button panel. This is a pretty famous piece that you might remember from Andrew's videos, and it's kind of one of those things that kind of over here with me for now because I don't have any black button panels. Moving on up here, we've got 3 Otis rotodial buttons. This was from the Salazar Center in Dallas, and these are from the service car. Here we have a surge button. Here is a very basic Adams call button. However, this came from the Sears Tower in Chicago, Illinois. Here's just a basic Houghton call button, and then a car top station from a long elevator. And then here we have various Otis plates. Moving on up to the next shelf, we've got a few more plates. Not so organized this time, bunch of just various ones. And here's the old C.J. Anderson call button. I've had this thing for years. Here we have an Otis car top station, which I actually restored in one of my part videos. Here we've got an escalator stop switch. Up here is an old general call button. I've had this thing for a long time. Otis Series 1. Newer Otis. The ThyssenKrupp safety ambassador button, an Otis vandal resistant call button with the nice clicky buttons. So these are the clicky ones, these are the not clicky ones. And over there we have the PTL fire service panel. Up onto the next shelf, we have a few plates here, mostly long stuff. We've also got this little Portland elevator call button. Here's one of the GAL call buttons from the 707 building in Roanoke. This is a Dominion elevator. Here we've got the Arrow Heart call button, which the battery has died. I've had this thing for a while. Westinghouse Vandal Resistant from the Cathedral of Learning in Pittsburgh. A very satisfying Fujitec button. And 2 long call buttons. We've got an intermediate and a terminal. Moving up to the next shelf, we've got a Montgomery black button car top, this really cool rotary armor call button. And what's really interesting about this is these buttons are in St. Louis a lot on general elevators, and they're not clicky like this. So this actually has a clicky contact. Here we have this really weird, I think Russian call button. Andrew gave me this thing. It is practically bomb-proof. This thing is crazy. I still need to wire it up, but I wired up Andrew's, just not mine. And we have some various Westinghouse buttons, which the batteries have died in. This one hasn't yet though. And then a long call button. This is from the Keener garage. And now up here on the top, we have a bunch of lanterns and PIs. So, you might know where these 2 came from. Those are from the Busch Stadium parking garage in St. Louis. We've got one from the West garage and one from the East garage. And then this up here is the PI from the Keener garage in St. Louis as well. So more St. Louis parking garages. However, the Keener garage has a little surprise. This one has a simulator, which I think, yeah, still works. The battery hasn't died yet. So some of you guys might remember the Keener PI is the one that you use your phone to control. Here is my part display panel. We're gonna go into the long PI button. If I can actually push it, there we go. And we're gonna send it up to 8. Helps if there it goes. So that's pretty cool. And even on my phone, you can see the indicator follows it as well. Has a little timeout before we go down to the street again. And back down it goes. This was actually the very first one of these that I ever built, so it has a, you can see it has a very sophisticated user interface. but it was still kind of fun to make. And then up on the top we have multiple lanterns, which you've seen some of these before, some of these you haven't. I think I had the Dover Impulse from the other video. That is new. I think that Otis one is new. I made a video about that thing. That is definitely new, the Schindler HT that came from Chesterfield Mall. Got a Kone lantern there. There's the fire service key from the Salazar Center. We've got a Schindler PI here. That's actually from the passenger elevator at Chesterfield Mall. Dover VR lantern, a long VR lantern, an access switch, an old Westinghouse thing that I found in a box in Chesterfield Mall, a Schindler van, and if we slide the Schindler van away, everyone's favorite long chime. Moving on over to the next shelf, we'll actually go top to bottom on this one. Over here we've got an old Dominion call button. This here is an old Westinghouse freight call button, which was kind of neat about this is it has this small font on these large buttons. Here we have an old Reliance CJ Anderson COP. A very basic panel, but very cool. Here we have a CJ Anderson dumbwaiter panel with these little square buttons. And then to the right, we have an Inland dumbwaiter panel. And as you guys probably know, these square Inland buttons are my favorite buttons. Absolutely love these little guys. And what's kind of interesting is I actually put these next to each other just to kind of show the comparison between the CJ Anderson square buttons and the Inland square buttons. You can see the fonts on these are actually pretty much the same. I mean, minus, I don't have a 1, but like the 2, the 3, and the 4. Very similar. I have this feeling that Inland was related to CJ Anderson somehow, but haven't been able to confirm that, but still pretty cool to have them side by side. Over here is a button I've had for many years. It's a kind of fancy Adams call button with these rotated square buttons. Over here's the old CJ Anderson constant pressure manual car panel. I love these old CJ panels. And then of course we can't forget my Otis dumbwaiter panel. Moving down, we have yet some more logos on the shelf there. Over here on the left is the Macy's shoe button from Chicago. And then we've got Schindler MT. With 2 different chimes. Here's an old Armor call button. Can't forget about the springy contacts. Here is this really funky old car panel from presumably a dumbwaiter or something. I'm not totally sure. It's got an old stop button. This might have been a COP for an elevator. Over here is the Montgomery A series call button, which for whatever reason my in-use light quit working, so that's fun. I've had this thing for a while. And then over here is the Shepherd GAL call button, which, wow, I need to fix that thing. It's about to fall over. But you can see it lights up, kind of. I think I need to repair this one too. Oh, it works. You can see here as things sit around for a while, they stop working as well. Moving on down to the next shelf, we have some more logos here. Then as for the buttons, we've got this old Dover CJ Anderson call button. This actually came from an office building in St. Louis, which is pretty cool. Here we have a Innovation Intermediate call button. This was from the service elevator of the Salazar Center. Here we've got 2 Otis Lexan buttons. This is an intermediate, and this is a terminal. Here we have the O'Keefe GAL panel, which is pretty cool. I absolutely love these tiny GAL COPs. And then over here we've got a clicky Otis Series 1 call button. I love these clicky buttons. It's actually kind of rare to see them as a call button. So we've got the up and the down, and then a priority service light. Moving down another shelf, of course we've got a few more logos here. But on the left we've got the Schindler HT button, which it kind of works. That might be due for a rebuild. I've got an intermediate here. Here we've got a couple of old CJ Anderson buttons. So this one would have actually come from a one you might have seen on a GNS in Chicago. So it has these kind of just clear white buttons. And then here you have more of your standard buttons, which, you know, I might actually pull this guy, put it aside, because I've got some of those up there. I don't necessarily need 2 of them. So this might actually get replaced with something else at some point. Here we've got an old Otis panel, old call button. And then over here we've got 3 Schindler RT panels. This was from the Busch Stadium parking garage. So this one and this one were from Busch, these 2. And this is one that just Jared gave me a while back. This one's kind of cool too. I might actually pull one of these out as well because I don't need 3 of those. So finding ways to optimize the display. And then moving on down here to the bottom shelf, we've got the Dover PI here. Over here, we've got the old Alderson GAL button, which that still is working nicely. And then I think this still works. Sweet. Here we have an old ESCO CJ Anderson car panel. And then over here, we have the car panel from an old G&S, Galler and Spec elevator in Chicago. These have these little bitty white buttons, which this is the call button. You can see they're bigger buttons. The COP buttons are actually smaller, which is kind of neat. I absolutely love these little buttons too. And then over here is the Baxter & Sons EPCO panel. And this was the first elevator button that I ever wired, and I think I wired this thing in 2017. The 1 button slightly works and the 2 button doesn't work. So this might actually be time for me to rewire it and make it not terrible anymore. Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. That used to light up blue for those of you who remember. And then over here we have the Armor rotodial panel, which I think the last couple of videos I've said, oh, I'll show this off in a part video. This is supposed to be a simulator that I built wrong, and it doesn't really work. It works, but then it dies. It's not built very well. I need to rebuild it, and I am very lazy and have not rebuilt it. So it currently just sits here. It has this nice wooden box I've made for it, and it will eventually function. It's even got this little panel up here on the top. So that's what that was supposed to do. There actually was a part video made on this, and then I stopped because the thing didn't work at the end. All right, moving over here, we have the Dover Impulse call button from the Texas State Capitol. And then behind it, we've got the Dover Impulse panel. But you might have noticed, it looks different. So that old 2-stop panel, which I've had for a long time, and it was actually the first elevator simulator I ever built, I actually replaced it with a new panel. So this is a 3-stop Dover Impulse panel, and I made a custom modification to it, which you guys can probably see. So originally this had just your door controls, your 1, 2, 3, just some key switches here, and an entire fire service panel. But I ended up acquiring one of these really rare Dover access control panels, and I really wanted to install it, and it didn't really make sense to do it on the other panel. So this thing came around, and I literally built the ideal Dover Impulse panel for me. So this has all kinds of fun things on it. You've got the keypad here, you've got this little bitty fire service panel. So we could do that. We've got some old micro switch keys. These are actually the keys that were on the old panel. We've got 3 floor buttons here, with 2 of them having a floor lockout. And then down here, I moved the blue door buttons and the old contacts to here. I swapped out the key switch for this old micro switch toggle switch for the stop. And then of course I left the alarm. Well, I actually put the old alarm contact in here as well. So we've got a really cool little representation of a bunch of different Dover Impulse parts. And the functionality is there for a simulator. I just need to rewire a couple of things, and this will be up and running. Because I'm pretty much going to take the old simulator I built and then just wire in the 3rd floor, and we're good to go. And then up here, the logo is actually in much better shape as well. And you can see it's just a 3-stop as well. So this is a cool little upgrade to my old Dover panel. And I think this actually came out of a church in San Antonio, the panel did. So both of the Dover panels I had came from somewhere in San Antonio. All right, moving on over to the next shelves. We'll go ahead and start on the top on this one as well. Up there on the very top, we have one of the external PIs from the Busch Stadium parking garage in St. Louis. So I think that was, I forget exactly which one that was, but one of the east cars. This here is the old Westinghouse indicator that came from the Doco garage in Sacramento. This thing is a simulator, but I need to fix it. The power switch doesn't work anymore. So I'm actually thinking about rebuilding this to be on my network panels. So that panel is just kind of chilling right now. It's not going to use the little IR remote anymore. However, on the topic of network panels, you will see here below we have another one of the Busch Stadium parking garage PIs. And this is actually from car 9, which goes to all 10 floors. So if you look over here, these only go to 9 floors. So this was a west and that was an east. This was a west one, but this was from West 9. West 8 and 9 are the only 2 that go to all 10. So I decided to build this into a simulator. So just like the other one, If we go here, we can scroll down to the Busch Garage PI, and if we tap that button, you will see here it will load up the PI. So here's the control. Let's send it up to the top. And you also notice it has a working chime, which is pretty cool. And I actually tuned the chime to the pitch of one of the elevators. I don't know if it was exactly the 9 car, but it was one of the cars that whatever video I used for reference. We'll bring it back down to, let's say, the yellow floor. Moving on to this top shelf here, we've got a few US soft touch buttons. This thing is so weird. This one works sometimes and then sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if the battery's just dying or what, but that one sometimes works. You're supposed to turn the key on and it works, but these other ones work just fine. So I don't know what's up with this one. It literally was working before this video, so I don't know. Anyway, so here we've got some other soft touch buttons. These actually came from a parking garage here in St. Louis, up by the airport. I just happened to catch them when they were getting modded. Here we've got some more typical US buttons. So here's a circle, not a circle button, you know, shapes are hard. This is a square button next to a circle button. This came from somewhere in Virginia and Justin gave me this one. Here we've got some old GAL black buttons. So we've got just a kind of a generic intermediate, a Monarch one, and then this old general call button. So moving down here, we actually have this little 3-tier shelf that I built. Up here on the top, we've got one of the little bitty call buttons from the Busch Garage. We've got one of the California fire only buttons, an Innovation Fire Service key switch, this baby alarm button, a Adams sales sample button, Montgomery A-Series fire recall switch, and this little custom inland call button I made with the automatic elevator logo on the bottom. This would have been something you found in Chicago. Obviously not a tiny, tiny button that was made out of plastic, but that logo with that button. Here we have the car to lobby panel from the bank of 4 elevators at the Busch Stadium West Garage, cars 1 through 4. I've got the key here for it, so this would actually recall whatever car you wanted back to floor 1. Which, for whatever reason, I guess this key does not work very well. But that's how that would work. So I actually have all of the car to lobby panels for the entire West Garage. So I have cars 1 through 9, which you'll see the others throughout the tour. Over here is that little custom Montgomery A-Series fire panel that I built all those years ago, and it still works. Let me go ahead and grab the key for it. So we need to go into the firebox. So we're gonna open this up, and we're gonna grab out this set of keys. So you can see here, if I turn that on, the emergency operation light comes on. Then down here we have some more logos. What's kind of interesting about this St. Louis elevator tag, if we can get it to focus, for whatever reason it's not. All right, well anyway, it's being difficult. This St. Louis elevator tag just randomly fell out of one of the Busch Stadium parking garage panels. So I was literally carrying it into my room and I heard this thing fall out and there it was. I don't actually remember what panel it was from. And then over here we have one of the car top stations from the Busch Stadium garage. Of course, this was a replacement. This isn't the original, but I think most of them had these. Here we've got the Dover car top station. And this is the one with the secret chime. That's right, there's an Otis chime in there. And that might go away when I build the Otis Series 1 simulator, which, let's be real here, it's probably gonna sit there for another few years. Over here we have the Dover car top station. All right, moving down to the next shelf, we've got a bunch of Dover or ThyssenKrupp logos here, but then back up here, got a bunch of different buttons. So we've got a Montgomery square button. Here we have a circle inland call button, which, oh no, my battery died. Anyway, circle inland. We've got a ThyssenKrupp ISIS call button. Some fancy EPCO. Dover traditional, and some Dover impulse. Which, chime still works on this, but it might be time to rewire this too. Green and pink. And then this one over here is your more traditional incandescent, but this one's the old contact instead of the new contact. Moving down here, we have yet another 2-tier shelf. Down here we have a bunch of logos, mainly Westinghouse. But up here are some of the international buttons. So, well, of course, you can't forget the 3D printed STL elevator button, which I might be making a new version of this at some point. I kind of want to, but I also don't feel like it. Over here is the Boss call button. Here's an old Schindler, another old Schindler, another old Schindler. Oh man, that one quit working. Ooh, this old Kone button, and an innovation sales sample that is definitely not a Ford button. This is totally something you'd see here. Up here we've got a Westinghouse. Oh, come on, that one broke too? Man, all my stuff's breaking, that's lame. Here we have a Schindler Houghton, GAL Vandal Resistant, an old Southern, whoa, everything just shifted, so let's fix that. An old Southern, oh geez, okay, well I guess can't. An old Southern GAL call button, which I kind of made a custom button configuration for. Here we have one of the buttons from the Wells Fargo building in Roanoke, Virginia. And then, of course, more Dover Traditional. I've had this thing for a long time with these kind of cool arrows. So down here on the bottom shelf, we have this Otis Touch Adams replacement, which I correctly put orange LEDs in, which looks really nice. We've got some Epco, an Adams VR, Epco SSL, Armor VR. Oh man, all my batteries keep dying. Mad, this was actually the call button from the Keener Garage. And then this old Westinghouse Rotodial button. There is a better look at that Westinghouse button. Down here we have the Westinghouse Epco call button, the round one, with the cool white and red buttons. Moving on over to the left shelf, we've got this Bruno wheelchair lift button, which used to light up, but the batteries died, which I never did put new batteries in, I just had the ones that were in there. We've got a Westinghouse interlock and two modern Schindler buttons. And this old Dover logo. Here we have a US circle button car panel. Here we have this old Armor car panel from a Trimin elevator, which if you look really closely, oh, you can see the logo down there. I've actually only been on a couple other Trimins ever, and they were freight elevators. This is from some passenger elevator. Now this here is a Schindler HT COP from the service elevator at Chesterfield Mall. I've wanted to get HT for a long time, and I'm actually kind of excited to get one from an elevator I've ridden a few times. All right, moving up a shelf, we have one of the call buttons from the Hotel Roanoke in Roanoke, Virginia. Here we have a Kone 220, a Montgomery A Series, nice and compact 6-stop panel, and this old Dover button with these old black buttons. Moving on up a shelf, we've got a CJ Anderson freight elevator call button. This came from somewhere here in St. Louis. Here we have an old Dover black button. This really weird button that looks like RT, but it is definitely not Adams. This is something I've never seen before. This old Curtis button with this big chunky button. Pretty neat. Here's an old CJ Anderson black button with the triangle lights. And here is the call button and door controls from the second floor of Sears at Chesterfield Mall. Moving on up here to the top shelf, we have this old Dover black button call button. Next, we have this button that came from Spain. When Sam was there, he actually got a couple of these, and he gave me one of them, which is really cool. It actually just looks like a braille. He said this is basically the equivalent of Innovation over there, a very common fixture, but it's neat to have some more foreign stuff in the collection. Here we've got the Innovation Security call button, the old Montgomery Vector, which I built all the custom parts for. So here in between the two Vectors, we have this rather neat CJ Anderson call button with this very rare blue arrow button. I've never seen the blue arrows out in the field. These were actually some parts that Andrew and I got from an elevator company. And the old button here was just a black button that said call on it. And I said, this is way cooler. So I put that in here. And you can see when I push it, it lights up in use. Over here, we have a Montgomery Vector call button and a Montgomery Vector fire service key switch. And then over here, we have something that's really unique. This here is what appears to be a very rare old inland dumbwaiter button. I've never seen this style of button out in the field before. And these buttons are way smaller and push way different than inland. So I went and grabbed one of my spare inland caps, and if you look here, you can see the difference between them. So you can see it's the same arrow style, kind of the same idea, but these are way different, and they have a smaller button, and they have a different contact, so pretty cool. And then up here at the top, we've got one of the indicators from the Wells Fargo building in Roanoke, an Otis Touch button. Here you've got the old Westinghouse lantern, which you can hardly see because I have this bright light here shining up to create some light. And then the fire recall instructions and the Otis lantern. Moving on into this little corner here, we've got the Electrodyne call button, an Otis black button, and the car panel from the Hilton in Indianapolis. Over there in the corner is one of the call buttons from the same place that my long panel came from. So that long panel was actually a mod of an old elevator. So most of the time Long used these Innovation surface mounts. You can see there it's got the GAL key switch. So that was a Long. So down here we have the Schindler Houghton PI, which this still works. This is the one where we can enter a floor. So we're gonna go to 99. And you can see it goes up to the floor. So this is one of the things I want to convert into a internet control thing like my other ones. But for now, it works just fine when you use the IR remote. So you can see it's going all the way up to floor 99. Nice. So above it, we have the car panel from Car 9 or West 9 at the Busch Stadium parking garage. So this thing's pretty cool. This is actually someday going to control the indicator that I showed you earlier. So you'll be able to push a floor button here and it'll actually control the indicator. So that'll be kind of fun. Again, that's one of the many I want to build that, but I don't feel like it. So someday that'll hopefully do that. But for now, we just have this cool panel. Let's go ahead and turn that back. Oh, I just broke the switch off too. Whoops. And then up here we have a CE indicator from a ThyssenKrupp elevator. And we can actually control this as well. So if we go back to my panel here, we have CE indicators. So if we click on the CE indicators button, you will see here that it loads the CE panel. So let's send it up to 18. So while this one goes up, these are also going up. So I've got this big monitor panel here. So we are jumping around a little bit, but that is related. So that actually goes up with it. So you can see those are tied together, which looks pretty cool. Then moving on over here, we have the car to lobby from cars 5, 6, and 7 at the Busch Stadium West garage. So you saw 1 through 4 earlier, here's 5 through 7. Then below it, we have the Keener West garage car panel. So this is the Long. So this is the more rare Long vandal resistant. So this is the one where if you push a floor, it will change the indicator to said floor. So just like that. There's also the alarm. And the fire service key will turn on this light, which I don't feel like going to get the key now. So moving on over here, we have a Montgomery Vector car panel. Now this might look really familiar from one of my YouTube shorts and part videos of building a simulator with this panel. However, you might be wondering, well, why is it not turned on and working? Well, that's because there are actually 2 of those Montgomery Vector panels. The one that I built the simulator for is in Roanoke, Virginia, in the Elevator Museum, and the other one is right here. So this is, like I said, the same panel from the same place. I plan to build the same simulator on mine at some point, but again, like all the other things, I just got to do it. So if you want to see a detailed video of this panel or the one I built for the museum, be sure to check out that video. Over here we have the Skinny Adams car panel. That would have been like an Otis Lexan replacement. Kind of a floppy panel, but it kind of hides there and it fits there nicely. And then over here we have the G&S crank from an old manual. So over here we have the Otis Touch panel. Now I actually did something a little different to this. I took the cabinet that used to be separate from it and I actually mounted it to the COP using that piece of wood back there, and I didn't have a saw, so I didn't cut the rest of it off. I just left it because I figured I could mount something else to it. But I figured it was kind of cool to put this whole panel together to show you how it would have looked in the elevator. And of course, Otis Touch, they light up, which looks pretty cool. Let's pick a couple random floors like that, and then we can flip the switch here to turn them off, put it into momentary mode, so you can see they kind of just flicker. And then up here we have the indicator from the service elevator at Chesterfield Mall, which I haven't really done much with, so I just set it up there. I was thinking about mounting it to this wood, and then I just never did that, so it sits there. And over here, you might recognize this piece. This is the Otis Annunciator simulator from the Salazar Center. Not going to go through a full demo of this thing right now, so if you want to see that, I've got a full video about building this and a demo of it, so be sure to check that out. And then moving on to the final little section. This is my old cabinet. It used to have my airplane display in there, not anymore. So we saw this button earlier, but that is the car top from a Dover elevator. That was actually the car top of that Dover we saw at the beginning with the EPCO buttons. Up here we've got this interesting little indicator. But in here we've got a couple of neat things. Here we have this inland dumbwaiter panel. Again, my favorite square buttons, so this was exciting to get. Here we have an automatic elevator. Now this is the automatic elevator from Chicago. I'm still trying to get my square button automatic inland panel, hopefully someday. But this was a Adams one. You can see here it's wired up. And then over here we have a square button Montgomery panel. I don't know where this came from, but it was somewhere in the Chicago area. Up here, I just kind of have this Swift Meridia controller. This was actually the controller for that Dover elevator that we saw a minute ago. But back behind there is the car to lobby for cars 8 and 9 of the West Garage. So 1 through 9. Up here, we've got a couple more panels. So this here is the square inland buttons. So I actually got all the buttons I need to build a elevator panel similar to my childhood elevator. So for the time being, I just 3D printed this 2x3 plate. This obviously isn't how it was in the real elevator, but we have all the parts. Just need the metal. So if anybody can make custom metal, yeah, I'd like to make something with that. Here we have this old S. Heller button. Here's the old armor call button, and then this kind of just very old call button that I have no idea what it was from. Just old call button with kind of this cool pearly button. And then up here at the top, we have the external indicator from the Elmwood Garage in Roanoke, Virginia. So that concludes the March 2025 Elevator Parts Tour. You guys have been really wanting to see this, so I really hope you enjoyed this tour. Like I said, there's a ton of new stuff here. A ton of things have changed. It's basically a new display. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this first look at basically the new parts display. I'm sure at some point it'll change again, but for the next who knows how long, this is what it's going to be. A big thank you to everybody who has contributed things to this collection. The list is massive, and if I tried to go down the list, I'd probably miss something. So you know who you are. Thank you to everybody. Again, this is kind of a little test area for the Elevator Museum. So some of the things you might be seeing here might get implemented at the Elevator Museum at some point. So very exciting things. But again, you guys have wanted to see my personal collection for a while, so hopefully you are satisfied now. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.